And we work hard for those titles, but that don't exist where we come from. I'm like, I was doing what we call SOPs before I knew they were called SOPs. You don't have someone down the hall. You can say, sit here, wait 1 minute, let me go get somebody. And surprisingly, the men are doing that more than the women right now. I think the women are busy. Yeah, I know. And I'm like, this is like amazing. And don't call it a retreat if it's only one day. I'm like, oh, okay.
Hey, great day, everybody. Welcome to another podcast episode where we were bringing on another epic therapist. We are interviewing therapists for Mental Health Awareness Month all over the country to talk about different phases of becoming an entrepreneur. We're also going all the way back to how they entered into the field, early career. And so we are really excited about our guest today. Not only are they an epic therapist in the mental health field, all over, to me, the country, because they do a lot of great work, which she will talk about. But she is also one of our support coaches to our private practice academy students. So we're going to talk about that as well, and some of the things that she is seeing from our clients that are in the mental health field that are building their business. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and bring to the stage Melissa to the podcast.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me, Dr. TK.
Yes. So where are you located? What kind of license do you have? Give us a little scoop so that people can see how diversified the mental health field really is.
Yes, thank you for asking. So I am in Florida. I'm located in Central Florida, but because my whole practice is virtual, so I see clients all over the state of Florida, like to say from the Keys to the Panhandle. That's me. I can see you all across the state. I have 2 licenses. I'm a licensed mental health counselor and a licensed marriage and family therapist. I also have a certification as a national board certified counselor as well. So that's my certifications.
Nice. Okay. So we always like to do the title thing because it changes literally state by state.
And we work hard for those titles. But
exactly. But when the public sees it, they're like, I don't understand why it's like 5,000 acronyms. Like, I don't understand. And so, all right, let's go ahead and jump into it. What made you go into the mental health field? Why did you choose counseling or psychology to begin with?
Yeah, so there's a few different reasons why, but I'm going to go with the one that stands out the most for me. So originally I wanted to be an attorney. So I was actually in a pre-law magnet high school. I majored in pre-law and I think philosophy at first for the first year. And then I transferred from a community college to Florida State University. In my first semester, I had an 8 a.m. psychology class 101. I lived off campus. And I'm not like an early morning person. I'm more like a mid-morning person, but that's one class I did not miss. I was like in the front seat, the front row of the class I think it was Monday, Wednesday, Friday, on Fridays too. And it was a 50-minute class. And I still made sure I got there early enough to get all the minutes in, so to speak. And so that just kind of jogged my interest in seeing what other offers was in the field of psychology that I can lean into. I should also add, so my cultural background is Haitian. And so that's another thing that, like, for example, a therapist or psychology is not like nowadays might be different, but mostly culturally speaking, that's not like a common profession, so to speak. So when I was changing over from attorney to psychology, or I say pre-law to psychology, I called my mom and asked her about it. She was like, okay, I support you, because she's very supportive, but she's like, but that don't exist where we come from. I'm like, I know, Mom, but I'm glad we're here. And so it was one of those things where it was a cultural implication of it too, in terms of like, is that a valuable profession to pursue? Even though I was born and raised in the States, it was kind of like a little bit of a narrative I had to like break through a little bit, but I knew that me wanting to go every morning and get all the information, I wanted to at least explore the options. And so it led me down to eventually becoming a counselor a few years later.
Wow, who knew? Something else I learned. This question has never come up. Like, this is crazy.
Yes.
Explains again so much. Okay. All right. So we go to college, we graduate, and all the things. Tell us a little bit about your early career. Like, what are some of the places that you've worked in? Because I know we're taught to get a breadth of experience.
For sure. So I actually count my undergraduate experience as a volunteer at a hotline counselor. As a hotline counselor, my first exposure to, therapy, which was more crisis intervention over the telephone. And so it was my last year of my undergrad. And at that point, I'd already transitioned to psychology for my major. And so I wanted to have some type of experience, something that was close to what it would feel like to be a counselor. And so it was a pretty intensive program. It was like a 40-hour training program. We did parent hotline, which is for people who had, parenting issues. We had a crisis hotline for suicide. And this is all, I'm like early 20s, about to graduate college. So it was a lot of intensive work. And so it was a good exposure though, because it actually taught me what I learned later was person-centered therapy. So they actually use person-centered approaches in the hotline calls. And so I was excited that I learned it when I got to grad school. That was the first actual theoretical orientation I learned, but I had already been practicing it as a hotline counselor, the main tenets of it. And so that was one of my first I guess counselor type roles. And I was in it for a year, so it was a commitment, and there was a lot of time but I learned a lot from it for sure. Those basic crisis and intervention skills, I wouldn't trade it at all for anything else for the first experience.
Okay. And then after grad school, because I know we earn hours like at different levels, did you go straight into private practice, or did you go into like a 9 to 5? And I know some people even went and worked in a private practice at some point.
Good question. So after I had the hotline counselor position, I had the practicum internship in my graduate. So that was like my next counselor role in my graduate program. And at that agency, I was working at a domestic violence and sexual assault agency. And this was all in Tallahassee, Florida, the hotline counselor in this one. And so this was a nonprofit organization. They held like a lot of different resources they provided and services to people. So we had to get trained on like most of them, maybe not all of them, but most of them. So I was advocate, sexual assault advocate. I worked in the actual shelter for women who were abused. I shadowed in the courtroom where we had like a legal advocate there, and so I kind of like learned some of those things. I eventually ended up being offered a position, which is great, right after I graduated, or before I graduated, and I was able to start obviously after I graduated, and I went into the sexual assault counselor position role. And so there I stayed about 4 or 5 years, and I was matriculated up into a management role after. And so by the time I ended my position there, I was in charge of a sexual assault response team across all of Leon County. So what that meant was I would coordinate response to sexual assault. So that would include our 24-hour advocate schedule. We had sexual assault nurse examiners who were certified to do forensic exams, as well as the PD offices, or the police departments, I should say better. And so we would like help coordinate that. And what that meant was when a victim would go to the hospital, what's the streamline of response in terms of like what care they're getting. So it's not just they go to the ER and like they just get checked out. There's a lot of things that may go involved in that. And as an advocate, we would like basically be there to tell them their rights, basically, like without being attached to a police department or the hospital. We're just a standalone person just kind of there. And so by the time I left the position, I helped coordinate all the scheduling, all the systems, all the policy, not the policy of the hospitals, but just the policy of the program, because the hospital signed on to agree to do it, the police department, so everyone just like signed the what they call MOU, memorandum of understanding. Yeah. So MOU, everybody signed. And so then once it got signed, because I was a part of the sexual assault and domestic violence agency, we were in charge of like coordinating it. And so it landed on my desk. So like I was the person kind of like doing all those different things. So actually, it's funny, as I got into the DTA program, I thought back to all the stuff that I was doing. And I was like, I was doing what do you call it? SOPs before I knew they were called SOPs.
Over here right now, I already got the word advocacy. I'm like, because right now we do like the boot camps and master classes for DTA and for DTA Plat. For those of you who don't know, we'll talk about it later, but DTA is the Private Practice Academy for solo private practice. DTA Plat is for clinical expansion, like clinical supervision groups in therapy and stuff like that. And one of the things that we're highlighting to them this year, as you know, with our discussions, is taking advantage of your resume and not discounting it after you got licensed, because all of a sudden we get amnesia about all these things that you mentioned that are on your resume. And I highlighted, like, as I'm taking notes, like, you know, this still shows up when you become an entrepreneur. And it's really important for people who are tapping into this episode to understand that this experience is just going to make you a better entrepreneur, but you have to know that this skill set has already existed. You just have to transfer the information over to your practice. And I feel like that's where it gets lost in translation, as though we didn't have no work experience before.
Yes.
And I'm like, you built a whole program and you advocated, therefore you can link your clients with services. I mean, this is a fantabulous private practice setup here, you know?
Yeah, it is. And honestly, it's funny because I worked with a lot of social workers. I was like one of the few mental health counselors in an agency like that. Most of them were social workers. So even though I am trained as a mental health counselor, I practice, you know, mental health theories that I learned in school and in my practice now. A lot of my systems, I have to give credit to the social workers I work with, because I think had I not gone into an agency like that, I wouldn't necessarily be as comfortable with it, or just be thinking about it. Because even in my private practice now, I have my own resource list of people in the community. I go to different events and like I kind of do the connections, even with just me being a solo practice person, because I see the benefit of like having those connections. And to your point, that skill set, actually, when I went to my next position, which was at Florida State University, I got licensed when I was at the agency for nonprofit. And then after I got my license, I really wanted more clinical work. Because as you heard in the story, a lot of my work, I did counseling. So I also had counseling clients who would come in for crisis counseling, post-assault, like trauma-based care when it comes to that. But it wasn't clinical in the fact of, like, for example, we didn't diagnose there. So I had to be really thoughtful about how I kept my skills like up to par, because their mission was not to diagnose their survivors, right? Their mission was to keep them safe, give them resources, get them the care they need to heal through the trauma they experienced, not to diagnose them. And so, but I knew that obviously being licensed, I want to keep that skill set. So I would just go to different trainings and meet with different therapists and stuff to kind of get supervision and things to keep the skill set up. So by the time I got licensed, I really want to go more into the clinical route. And I felt like I got a lot of the support counseling and advocacy. And I felt like I mastered that as much as I could have at that point. And I didn't want to lose more of the clinical aspect. So I went to Florida State University. I was offered a position there as a staff counselor for the students. And so I had a few different positions, but the last position I had there was a outreach program director. And so to your point, the skill set that I had doing the coordination, because even though I did counseling, I was still considered outreach for that agency. So, because we did outreach events and stuff too, and awareness things. And so I transferred that then over to my outreach stuff on campus at Florida State University. So again, at the time, I didn't quite, notice all that. But then as I look back, I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense, because it was very seamless, as far as me being a staff counselor to just being able to afford the opportunity to practice that role. And so I was able to kind of do well at that while I was there. So I'm happy that I had the experience to, back it up, so to speak.
Yeah. And I'm just going to recap and tell people, don't discount or ignore your resume. To me, it gives you the ability, especially looking back, like 3, 5, for some people 10 plus years, is being able to see how much experience you actually had. Because sometimes when we're in it, or let's just say we're leaving the job, especially if it's not a job we prefer to be at, and we're wrapping up our resume to then add something new to our resume, we're excited to put that end date, not even realizing all the stuff that we did in the job description. And that is key, especially around topics around confidence, imposter syndrome, and being able to make it out on your own, right? So at what point within your career did you decide that you actually wanted at least a private practice to start with?
Yeah, so while I was at Florida State in that last position I had, I was thinking about it at the time. So that was about, how many years ago was that now? Thinking of years now, this is like crazy. Like, almost over 10 years ago, because I left Florida State in 2013. So right around that time, I was thinking about private practice, but I knew, because Florida State University, for those of my colleagues who are still there or work there with me, that was like my dream job. And so leaving there was really sad. And so I left just because my family's in South Florida and my husband's family's in South Florida. So we wanted to be closer. So we we're not quite then south, but we went mid-Florida, but it was just so far. So we went for personal reasons, but had I not left for that, I would have stayed there, like as long as I probably could have, and probably had a private practice on the side. And so it was a job I really was happy about, and I was sad leaving it, but I was happy with the decision personally to be able to expand my family and that type of thing. So as I was there, I had decided that, okay, I want to do a private practice, like kind of on the side. And so, but when we left, I wasn't in the position where I was ready to leap into a private practice from Tallahassee to Orlando. So I decided to get another position at a university, which was UCF at the time, which is again a great experience. I was able to be a counselor there for a few years. And so I decided to pursue my private practice part-time while I was there. So because I knew that I wanted to do it, I just wasn't sure. It's a different city, it's like a lot of different things going on. So I wanted to make sure I knew the landscape. And so I was able to kind of develop that there. The reason that I wanted to was because I was like, I feel like I wanted to explore the opportunity to do what I learned in the different jobs and kind of create something for myself. I had other reasons that came up later, but that was the initial reason. Was like, I feel like I could do it. I had enough resources, people who supported me, that I can give it a try. And so I wanted to kind of hone in on more. Again, a word I didn't know at the time was niche. So it was a niche I was looking at, but I know that was a word at the time. To be able to hone in, because I love college students. I was like my first love for like population. But then the one I wanted for my own practice wasn't this. I wasn't getting as much of that there, which is couples counseling. That was pretty much part of it. Because college students, they do come to couples counseling, but they probably come for maybe 1 or 2 sessions, maybe. They're about to graduate. They picking up and breaking up. It's a whole different type of couples counseling with college students. And so I knew I wanted more in-depth experience with systems work. And so that was one of the reasons I wanted my private private practice, which eventually got to Orlando when I came down here.
Yeah. That's like crazy, because I'm even thinking about, just as we've been talking about in more of our inner circles in different programs and conversations, is like the different culture of therapists. No shade to current therapists who are just getting out there, but I mean, we can recognize it when we look back in history. And it's quite fascinating that even, I'm gonna say before 2020, people who I asked, similar to yourself, like when you got into private practice back then, what was your desire to do it, even if you didn't start a private practice then, but you knew 10 years ago you wanted to do it? And the answer that typically comes up is, I wanted to explore. It was not a lot of, I just want to leave my 9 to 5. I want to run my own company. It was a very small percentage of people who said, I want to outright be an entrepreneur. And I wasn't even one of them. I saw myself, as you did, I was in my dream job as well, until, things took a turn for the worse with management, but the job itself did not run me away. It was more of the how things were managed. And I just said, okay, maybe I could manage myself a lot better and take care of my health. Okay. And so I just wanted to highlight that, because there have been multiple conversations with me and other therapists that are also hiring other therapists in their practices and things like that, where they are asking me so many questions around, hey, what's up with the culture of these therapists these days? Mm-hmm. And it's sad to me, because I think that has to do with being in the online space, the dopamine hits of everything being fast reaction, to the point where even when we have the boot camps, I started adding 2 years ago a disclaimer at the bottom of our boot camp saying, this is not a get rich quick scheme. Mm-hmm. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon. Even though the portal is 5 modules and you could be done in 6, it doesn't mean your practice will be earning $10,000 each month at minimum within 6 weeks. And it's sad that we have to overly explain that, given that what we do is even a process with people.
Yeah. And I'll also add too, I think one of the things that, like, I felt ready clinically too. I think that's because we're therapists first, and then we're business owners until we want to switch that up later. That's up to you. But when you're going into it, you're a therapist first. And so what I do find with therapists in this culture now that want to go out, I think that, not to say that's a bad thing, because all of us as licensed therapists should always get support. But I find that, like, the questions I get are questions I asked when I was surrounded by an agency, and I was surrounded by, staff that's been doing it 20 years plus my senior, versus going into a private practice, doing it by myself, and almost like not struggling, but having a difficult time with certain things that I feel like you're going to get in the first 5 years. You're going to get in the first 10 years, because that's just part of, like, you can't skip over the time frame. And I feel like, and in some ways I'm very fascinated in a good way, like inspired by the fact that some people do want to jump and do it. But I think with that, there's a mismark of, like, the reason that I also felt ready is I felt ready clinically, that I can handle a certain threshold of clientele I'm searching for, that I can kind of take care of mostly on my own. Yes, I'm going to get support and different things, but if I'm solo, I got to be solo. I can't go around down the hall and, like, get somebody to do it. It doesn't work that way. So I think that was helpful when I got into the business aspect, because I wouldn't want to feel uncertain in both at the same time. And to me, that sounds overwhelming. So for those that are going into it now and they're confident enough to do it, I give them kudos. But for those of you who are thinking of it and are not sure about your clinical skills in terms of your confidence to do it alone, not that you're not a good therapist, but to do alone 90% of the time. Because think about it, if you're in solo private practice, whether you do in person or virtual, and you have a client who's in crisis, you don't have someone down the hall you can say, sit here, wait 1 minute, let me go get somebody. I did that in all my agency work. You know what I mean? So now I have to have all my stuff together, all my systems I created by myself, or support, but still not a handbook that you say do these steps and have to second guess, am I doing the right steps? I know at this point in my career, I'm doing everything clinically appropriate and well and really strong. And the things that are like outliers come very few and far in between. And I have the resources readily to be able to do it for those type of, and even the clientele you choose to take on your own, without having immediate support, I think says a lot too. So that's one thing I'll say is, like, I agree with everything you said, and I would just add on the clinical confidence of it. I think having to do that and then be a business owner at the same time, that's a lot.
Well, and that's the part that I'm referencing too. I'm thinking about this, the Abundant CEO hierarchy that we typically present when we have a 3-day boot camp, and it's therapist's ability to look at themselves as, are you doing the bare minimum, which means that you just showing up to pay your bills, you just need a client to pay for this. So it's just literally an exchange, compared to the person who is the hustler, like they get stuff done, but again, there's no systems to back it up. There's no oh, I need to stop and build out something. They're getting tired. They're in the rat race. Then you have the ambivalent, where, like, and I feel like people go in stages, right? To me, somebody would come in as ambivalent if they've had conversations with other private practice owners that are going to keep it real with them, meaning the good, the bad, and the ugly of not just private practice, but running a business, being an entrepreneur, realizing that you have to rely on yourself to pay your bills. Yes. And also other people rely on you to show up and have a business structure that supports the service that you're providing. And so as you get higher and higher, the tip top is like technically like the self-fulfilling prophecy, like Maslow, but it's the abundant CEO, the person who recognizes they need systems to step away from their business, because that's what we wanted to do at our job. Who wants to work at a job and you ain't getting no vacation? You're not getting no time off, no PTO. So why is it that we feel like we can work forever in a private practice? That's not going to happen. You're going to burn out. And so because I know you're really good at organizing and building out the systems, what has the systems part of your business help you do in your personal life or for fun or even in business, like other streams of income?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So, I'm very grateful to have all the experiences I shared, and then also being a part of your programming, which helped me to put it in the solo private practice thing. Because I think the information is great and the confidence is there, but then to actually apply it to a different type of system because it's just you. So one of the things that I was able to accomplish with the systems is simple things as far as like how when you first see a client and then you have like the steps of kind of how you see them, it's all in your head. But then as you're expanding your business and doing different things, even the simple things don't come as easy, right? And so it's nice to be able to like have things written down in a way I can kind of go to, and also be able to know like I'm setting up my practice from the beginning as a 500 point company or whatever the case is, so everything is kind of there, and so it kind of allows me time to do that. And some of the day-to-day stuff is very easy in terms of the scheduling aspect of it, right? And so my clients have slots. So for example, my scheduling for like when I want to see clients in my system, I have certain days that I see them. In the beginning that was hard because it was like I kind of want to put them anywhere, and then that doesn't last for very long. And so now I'm able to kind of like keep a schedule in my system in terms of like where I put people, and I don't have to think about, okay, where can I put them? When's my lunch? When's this? Like, I know I eat at this time, pick up my son at this time. So for example, I'll give an easy thing. So I see mostly couples. So I built my practice in the evening because one, at that time, my son was home with me more often. And also it's easier for couples to see in the evening. So it kind of worked out for me. I get my husband comes home from work in the evening. I see them, give my son to him, and we're good. Now that my son is in preschool, I'm able to add more hours in the day, but I still haven't weaned out my evening yet because it still works for my practice because I see couples. And so what I'll do is have certain days a week I have daytime hours and certain days I have evening, and I keep like a 4 to 6 block where I go pick up my son. Like I can't put nobody there. It's no kind of negotiation. Like, even if I might have to add 30 minutes here, squeeze it. Like, no, we're not going to do that. So that keeps it easy for my personal life because I know where to plug and play things versus like trying to think about that every day as far as like where I'm gonna put clients. That's one of those skills I think that we downplay in the beginning, like how important
schedule clustering your schedule that works for you, not just also in this season, but whatever season is coming up, and not negotiating, like saying no. Because your clients are going to say like, no, I can't make that availability session. Do you have any more spots? If they do it, we need to do it too for ourselves.
For sure. And even things like having most of my Fridays off. I'll do Mondays, admin days. I don't put anybody in the daytime. And most at this point my clients know too, so it's kind of a little bit easy. I mean, new clients, I have to like onboard them and stuff like that. But for the clients that have been with me for a little bit, they know the date times I work and they work for their schedule, which is why they signed on. One of the reasons they signed on with me anyway. So I would say a scheduling system is probably one of the most important thing. My consultation system as well, where on my website they can just put in a request to meet with me and answer the questions, and that makes it a lot easier as well. Having my consultation spiel, the things I go over in the call, like all those things made it a lot easier. In the beginning, also with the confidence part of it too, sometimes you're really a little bit nervous about how to have those conversations. But once you have a system, whether it's scheduling, your consultation, your spiel that you give for every call, and you do it over and over again, you're going to feel more confident. You're going to be able to bring in the clients that you want. So I would say those are probably, especially in the very beginning, the 3 things I would say made the biggest difference once I really honed in on those 3.
Yeah. And let me recap for those of you who are not in the community, or those of you who are, but maybe you have not made your way over to the big old area called automation, is you want to do as much as you can while building your business. It's not going to all come in the beginning, but you want to set up as much as you can things that can be automated, or at least things that could be organized. Like if we even take a new client, that we press a button and all of the forms are there. We're not scrambling for the form. So as as Melissa had mentioned, like she sees couples. We know some people who see different variations of like children to adults to family of 4 to then couples. Well, couples, family of 4, and then children, and then adults all require different intake forms. They require maybe even variations of consent forms and things like that. And so we don't want to be scrambling for those things, but then put ourselves online and say we're wide open for business. You're wide open to receive a client to call you. You're not actually your systems are not set up and they're not responsive to actually onboard a client. And better yet, something else that might be missing for a lot of therapists is, what are you doing in your back office to maintain the client beyond a progress note and treatment plan? Because there are other things that you can do. And so when you look back over, and it's a huge question, when you look back over your private practice wins, which some of them you have shared, but also lessons learned for the therapists who already have a practice, because I know you came to our community already having one. What are some things that you still realized you needed to either learn or refresh upon while already being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, good question. I think for me, it was a lot of the marketing part, and a lot of it was mindset, because I think as helpers, we typically want to help, and we don't want to feel like we're kind of like being too salesy or like being too which feels like uncomfortable, because our training, usually we are helpers at heart anyway, and then our training amplifies that, right, in our therapeutic work. And so it doesn't feel like it translates very well at first if you don't really do the mindset work around it. And I think when I was because I was doing it part-time, I didn't have the pressure necessarily to get a whole bunch of clients. And so when I came to your programming, at DTA, I was transitioning from part-time to full-time. So because I had a full-time job, I was doing a lot of word of mouth. I had a website, but it wasn't really, doing much. It was kind of just there for people for a reference. But a lot of it was word of mouth. A lot of it was posting on some of the Facebook groups and stuff. And I did get enough people to fill out like 3 to 5 clients a week. So it wasn't like too much. I went back to my previous employers who had resource lists okay, they can't see a client, so they'll send it to other people. So I did a lot of go to people I know when I got enough to fill a part-time caseload. But I knew that it wouldn't be enough to fill a full-time caseload. And so I was doing, and it was something you said in one of the boot camps I went to. I was doing a lot of YouTubing and Googling, and I got a lot of information, and I felt overwhelmed. And I was just I don't even know where to start. Because I'm not afraid to do research. I'm not afraid to read a lot or get it. It was an implementation factor. It was I got all this information, but what do I actually do with it? And also I don't want to come off as too salesy as well and feel like I'm trying to get all these clients, and it feels uncomfortable for people. And so going to DTA, it helped me with the mindset around I'm offering a service, right? It's a service, and then I have these ways people can compensate me for my service, and I'm still giving good care. And ultimately, people are going to match with me based on, my niche, how I brand myself, all different things, and I'm going to help myself through the support of your program get the people that are going to be naturally aligned with me anyway. And then the money is what comes next. Money is important, but it's okay not to lead with the money when you're attracting clients for service, because they're really coming to you at a hard time, right? And so that took a little while for me to kind of wrap my head around. But once I did that and I went through the program DTA, I was stuff just started coming in, because I was more, I guess, a mindset shift around honing in who I was as a therapist and having that be my brand versus feeling like I had to brand myself into something else to get money clients. I don't know if that makes sense, but
no, it does. Yeah, in the online space right now, there are things that I see from people who do things like I do, and then just therapists, right? And so on one end, we do all this schooling, and we are told that we're technically the experts. We got a license to prove it. You know what I'm saying? Especially if you've gotten supervised in one particular area, you can technically go out and get a job, and then they interview you and you got the job, which means you're the expert at the job, outside of whatever they're going to train you on. So that's one side, is you're a expert with your license. I'll just keep it at that.
Yes.
Then what we're referring to, that I see mixed messages in our field, is what it takes to be a business owner. And so I've seen Some people talk about mindset just as entrepreneur, not even just therapist. Then I see some people directly talk to, I've seen ads, like directly talk to therapists and say, you didn't go to school to understand how to run a business. But I'm like, but you're selling them something to help them run a business. Like that doesn't make sense. Like I keep it real with them. Tell them if you want to have a business, you're going to have to learn something about running a business, period, point blank. Like unless you want, like technically y'all can all go out and pay somebody $50,000 plus to be your whole operations manager. And if you have that overflow, I mean, go ahead. But I always say still have a pulse on what those people are doing so that you know your $20,000, $50,000 has an ROI. If I'm paying somebody $50,000, you bet your bottom dollar, I better be making over 150. Like I need to be making that 10 times ROI or something. And so I know that you've done a lot of work with couples and you've been very intentional with the work that you've done with couples. Now I want to shift into sharing with those who want to expand in a way that we pride ourselves on in our community, which is doing something on an easier playing field versus making things more complicated to get a whole new business entity structure.
Yes.
You are doing things right now still with your ideal clients. Can you share with us all the things that you're doing right now with couples?
Yes. And that's my favorite part. Like there's just a transition. You just said it right there. Like, oh, it was so seamless. And so the first year or two of me going full-time private practice, I tried a lot of different things and I did well at them and things were good. Right. But it wasn't until I landed in doing retreats for couples. I do some for women as well, but the retreat for couples is kind of where my heart is. And the way that aligns with my practice is, or the clients I see, I should say those types of clients, is that I serve Black women and couples who are struggling in their relationships. And so that's, I see for therapy. And so my retreats now offer a space for that as well. For me, it works out well too, because I do in-person, do a lot of virtual, my therapeutic part of my practice is virtual, but my events are in person. And so it's an opportunity for people who maybe, for example, if they don't live in the state of Florida and I'm not licensed to see people outside of Florida at this point, that they can come and see me there. Or maybe they want in-person services, but I don't offer that right now, but they want to see me at a retreat, right? Or they've graduated from my, therapy, couples therapy, and they want to try my retreat in the future or strengthen their relationship in different ways. And so it's working out really well. And then it's so funny too, when you talk about like the breadcrumbs across your career. And so I was telling my husband, I was like, he was helping me like reorganize my office because I was getting like a whole bunch of stuff for these events. I'm like, where do I put all this stuff at? And so I have a closet in my home office or whatever. And so I put it in there. And as soon as I was organizing the closet, I'm like, oh, this reminds me of my outreach closet at FSU. And so at Florida State, we had like an outreach closet with a key. And so only I held the key and the director had the key or something. Yeah. I had to keep the inventory going on in there. And so like, it kind of like had like a flashback of like when I was there years ago to like now my home office outreach closet, so to speak, of like all the things that I purchased for these events, like, tea maker and snacks and just all the little giveaways or whatever. And so when I think about the clientele I serve for my therapy practice, it goes very seamlessly into my outreach, or not called outreach, my retreats, so to speak, in terms of who I serve there. And so I'm really passionate about it because I get to use my therapy skills, but in a different way, right? And so I can educate, I can do exercises with them, I can help them get community within each other, because obviously in therapy, and I don't do group therapy at this point, so I just either individual or couples, they don't get a chance to like see each other. And so there's almost like an opportunity to do like workshops and stuff like that within the retreat space for them to like connect. And that's one thing I know is a lot about like Black couples too, and I need to talk more about this as well, just getting my own platforms, is that culturally speaking, we don't always have a safe space to talk about our romantic relationships with people in our life. And some of that's cultural, right? It's like, keep your business at home type of thing, or auntie so-and-so be gossiping, or like, your mom
keep it within spirituality. Yeah, like don't share it, but to God, yeah.
Yes, exactly. And so all the different things. And so what I'm finding in the retreat space is that the Black couples that do come together, I find it refreshing because they don't have that space on a regular basis to do that. And so they're able to like relate to each other, support each other. And I will even say like the couple retreats I've had the past year or two, some of the people are getting together on their own, which is something I kind of told them like as a side, like, hey, if y'all want to get together, it's up to you, but I'm not going to be a part of that. That's just if y'all want to, it's up to you. And surprisingly, the men are doing that more than the women right now. I think the women are busy. Yeah, I know. And I'm like, this is like amazing. And it's kind of like my vision for the future, but it's kind of like happening kind of already without me necessarily putting a like me putting a system around it per se. It was just like a comment, like, hey, you guys love this weekend, feel free to change numbers if you want to. It's not no pressure. And so they're just kind of like just doing it on their own. So it's like really a great experience that I get to like elevate my services and amplify them, and also be able to like kind of let people do their thing at some point too, because obviously as therapists we can't be with them all the time, right? So you want them to have those support spaces without you, and so it's becoming bigger than I was hoping for this fast in a way. So it was really
and I was going to go back to what you said with like couples, but also mindset that you were talking about in the beginning of entrepreneurship, because I know that you came to our Orlando VIP experience that we had in 2024. It feels like 2025 is because it was at the end of the year. Yes. But it was a very intimate group. And one of the things that ended up coming out of that in later conversations is you were putting together like the daytime event. And then after a couple of weeks or whatnot, you start talking about the overnight. But can you speak to the mindset shift of being okay to allow yourself to say, actually, there's still something else that I want to do. Might be a little scared to do it, but I have a circle. Let me talk to some people, but I'm gonna go after it though. And can you share with them how you took one level of your couples retreat to like what the second level was?
Yeah, it's a great point. And that's one thing I appreciate about the VIP experience too, is that you were able to give us support even after the event, because there's so many thoughts and ideas that come out of, an event like that. It was a 2-day thing. It was really intimate. It was great. And so I was like bursting with like all these ideas and things, still in line with retreats. I did come with my one idea. I was like, okay, I'm going to do more retreats. That's what I want. And so I think one of the things I remember us voxering about was like capacity. And so you did a gentle challenge around my fear of my capacity. And you were like, why don't you just kind of see what happens, and versus like boxing yourself in like 6-8 months early, of the day, to just see if you can do it or not or whatever. And so when you said that, I was like, yeah. And so I started thinking of like the things I'm already doing as like my beta, which they were my beta, but I wasn't like thinking of it as that until I did the launch phase with you at the VIP experience. And so I was like, okay, so that I did a couple betas. I want to try something else. And so this just be my beta of the next one, versus me thinking like, oh, I did these other 1-day events, and so I either have to stick to that, or if I do this weekend couples retreat, which I end up doing, then it has to be like perfect because I already did these 1-day ones already. So then I should be elevating their experience. And it's like, you're already elevating their experience. Like you're adding a whole day, you're taking them to a hotel this time. There's a whole bunch of stuff different that they're grateful for too. And that helped me to realize that one, I'm already kind of doing what I was, trying to do. And it also taking the pressure off of having to do more than what I've already planned. And then whatever I planned my first type, because this would be my first weekend one, it is already elevating it or expanding it from the 1 day. And also it's a beta of a weekend couples retreat. I had not done that particular one before. So the idea about capacity and like being fearful about, can I handle it? It's going to be too much. And you helped me kind of see like, okay, just slow it down, sit with yourself, think about it, and see what you can actually do, and let that be your practice run, in a sense, your beta, and then see if it's going to be really too much for you versus assuming it's going to be, right? And so that was what helped me to kind of shift from the fear mindset of it and the capacity kind of mindset of it to trusting myself and what I've already done and acting off that.
Yeah. I'm going to add in a word that, most therapists despise, which is statistics. And what we're talking about is follow the data. Because sometimes we assume the probability of something happening or not happening, and we haven't even tried it yet. And there's no right or wrong way. I'm going to just throw this in here, especially with live events, because as you were talking about like going from, I'm going to say couples in, online to then couples for a day event to then couples overnight. That first of all looks very differently in 3 different launch phases, but everything that you do is going to give you information, data to decide, how do I want to take it up a next level? If I do, and why do I want to take it up a next level? Why do I want, or what do I want for these individuals to experience that they will only experience if they spend the night, kind of thing. And it reminds me of the very first event that I did for therapists outside of like a CE event, because the VIP experience. Yes. The VIP experience was actually in an Airbnb, which most of y'all know, but it was backward from what you're talking about. So I'm trying to explain to whoever is listening, there's no right or wrong way, because we decided to do Airbnb first because that was my thing. I'm like, let's spend a night, let's have a slumber party. Therapists already isolated. And then it was little things like, oh my God, everybody in the house has a dietary restriction and we're spending the night.
Yeah.
And therapists low key after a brain dump, low key want to be by themselves. And I was like, well, this isn't what I am.
Mm.
Like they were connecting, don't get me wrong, but it was times where they definitely wanted to be alone and it's not couples, you know? And so I realized it's a lot easier for them to have their physical own space, for us to be in a hotel, or for me to get a peer space and then y'all get somewhere close and then y'all can commune on your own. But at the end of the day, you'll figure out what works best for your audience after you've done it.
Yeah.
And I can't reemphasize that. I can reemphasize that like every day. And it's probably going to fall sometimes on deaf ears, but try something first before you knock it.
Yeah, it's true. That actually happened my first one day event with my couples too. Is so I planned the one. And thinking back, it was really me, not them. But as I was planning, I was like, they're not gonna want to, because I have people driving across, because I'm virtual, so my community is all over. So like I have people driving from across the state of Florida. So I was like, they're not gonna want to come and like spend the night and all that. Let me just give them a little one day. They could just go home the same day, like whatever. I'm like, and they were like, why would you say spend the night? I was like. I think I'm doing them a favor, but like, not making them overcommit to a whole weekend of people they don't know, whatever. And they're like, we couples, like we got kids at home, we're ready to like just be away from them. I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense. Like, and don't call it a retreat if it's only one day. I'm like, oh, okay.
Hey, that's good. Like you just giving us a babysitter. You giving us a babysitter a night out. That's funny.
But that pushed me to doing the overnight. I thought, well, that kind of makes sense, right? That whole like, I don't want to do this, and then it's like, no, ask your audience. See, I mean, try everything, of course. If you want to try it, but also don't assume anything until you ask them. I think what you're saying makes complete sense. Yeah. I had that experience too.
Yeah. So we've talked about thus far early career, a lot of work in the advocacy space. I'm just still in awe of like all the things that you've done. I'm like, how can we not know this? But everything makes so much sense.
Yes.
And so I know that we briefly discussed that you were a DTA support coach. You also talked about what I do in the boot camps is I say, you can go to Google University, you can go to YouTube University. I go to them now. The problem is you get sucked in the rabbit hole and then you come out being more overwhelmed, and that takes more time to then figure out and create your plan, because you don't know whose plan is correct for you. And so as we talk about learning, we have a group of clinicians every so often that like go through cohorts, and then sometimes people kind of pop in through the back doorway when we do interviews for DTA. And this is our private practice program. Melissa, along with Shayla, have been coaches for the last few years. And the way that we integrate them in our community is a few times a year, they come in and do a specialty training on something that they learned and expanded in their practice from the structure. And then they took it off, ran it on their own, and built out this whole phenomenal system. So Melissa does things around, I'm gonna call it like your special sauce. We call it your framework, right? So how do you see having a middle person as yourself and Shayla as a support coach be in benefit to the therapist in our program? Especially considering that sometimes we don't want to ask the professor questions, because that's sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing, first of all, I still consider myself a part of the community. Like even as a support coach, I don't feel like I'm higher or lower. I just happen to be here a little longer, and I can give you something easier to get to them quicker. Like that's kind of how I see it. But when I'm with the community, whether it's on Facebook or in the calls, of course the calls are more interactive because we're there for an hour together and stuff. But I would say even on Facebook, depending on how interactive we're getting with each other, that it's a phenomenal experience. Number one, for me being a support coach, that I feel like I'm learning a lot from the students that are coming in. And also I noticed that they sometimes ask me questions and things that maybe they wouldn't necessarily ask you. I think them knowing that I went through the program, like as a student, I think that helps. And I think also there's like, I know I kind of had that too when I first came into DTA as well. I think people really admire you, Dr. TK. And I think there's kind of like this, I'm gonna say celebrity kind of feeling sometimes of like, oh, we don't want to, or the professor, well, you are the professor, but you know what I mean? That feeling like,
yeah, I get it.
Question or whatever the case is. And so I think that may shy people away from it. But I think having us kind of be there as options for them. And also I think like, because me and right now Shayla have our own niches too. I think the students have been around for, a few months or more, know the things that we specialize in, I guess, in DTA. So I think they also know like who to tag, like, they have questions or whatever the case is. So I know I always try to know, Shayla does too, on our calls. And also whenever we do pop in the Facebook group to say, hey, if you have any questions, let us know. Here, our call is coming up. We follow up after the call, like that type of thing. So those prompts, I think, and some people are sad when they miss it, like, oh, we missed it. Oh man, I didn't get a chance. They're like really wish they could come. And so we'll say, watch the recording, of course. If you have questions, like, we still make ourselves accessible to them even after the call. Cause I think people miss the call, but they also miss the fact that they couldn't, like, for me, I do framework, right? Like, they want to maybe get feedback on their framework. And I say, well, bring your framework to the call and we'll go over it together. And that always goes well. People always leave with their framework either completed, or if they came in with it half done, it's going to be, or if it's half done, it's completed. But if they haven't started, they'll come leave with like a half of it kind of put together. And so that's always a great thing. And so we always reinforce and say, hey, it's okay if you haven't come to the call. Just like I had people email Jay, their Facebook. So we say, come to the call, put it in the Facebook group. If you really, don't want to do that, you can email Jay, and then Jay will send it to me. And so we'll have all these different options for them to get direct support and feedback that I'm happy to give them. And they're really grateful for it. Like, they're like, because I think the framework part that makes them feel kind of shy about like speaking about what they do behind closed doors to the public. And I think there's like, I had that too, like that. I got to tell people what I do. And it's great. But like, and also we're therapists. Like, other therapists are watching. It's almost like when you're in school, you do like a role play in front of your class. Like, no one's doing a role play in front of your class. Yep. And so I think showing people your work is sometimes a little bit intimidating, but I think it takes that down if it's me and Shayla versus maybe if it's you. And so I think that helps all together that way.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you mentioned that. Somebody finally commented on my video that I published, I think a day or two. And I'm like, this is about to be my therapy session, like in the midst of it, because I was talking about investing in yourself and why people might be afraid to invest in yourself. But it ended up turning into like more of my business therapy session with like, y'all in a car with me. Can somebody tell me from the outside looking in why people don't like show up to ask questions and approach me, right? And I get the philosophy behind it, because I've had coaches before, plenty of them, that I go into that starstruck mode too. But it's always different when you are the student versus when you are the professor, because I still have a hard time even with y'all saying that. I'm like, but you know me, kind of thing. But I'm like, okay, I get it. But at the same time, the reason why I think I harp on it more with mental health providers versus if I just was serving general entrepreneurs who I don't know if they went to college or not, is the mere fact of it is, unless they just graduated, they were on campus in college, majority of them. I've been a practicum professor. I've been a family therapy, a theoretical orientation professor. You do role plays in class. When you go to practicum, you talk to your professor about what's happening at your site. And the correlation that I made in those videos is like, how is it that it was okay in group supervision? One-on-one supervision is different. That's like one-on-one coaching. But we did way more group work in smaller settings than we did one-on-one. And I find it very fascinating that, we've curated, because we're niched, like I'm niche, that we don't have thousands of people on our coaching call. So why wouldn't, I just been trying to figure it out. Like, why wouldn't you take advantage of something that looks very similar to business clinical supervision compared to what you make up in your head? Like, everybody's watching me. Well, everybody was watching you when you had to, if you got your doctorate degree, you had to present your whole dissertation and get scolded. You feel me? On 100 pages. So I'm like, it's not like this y'all first rodeo, but maybe it's because it's also foreign. But is it, we can talk about this all day long, because I'm like, but is it foreign? Because you got 50% of the job done. You already know how to be a therapist.
Yeah. So what I noticed too is like, and you've done this on some of the DTA calls too, where sometimes I'm going to just call on people. And I feel like it's one of those things where like, I haven't had I've said like, actually, what do I do? I just start saying people's name. I don't even warn them and call them and say, hey, so. But I do it like in my Melissa way, which is like, just want to make sure you're okay. How's everything going? Like, I don't necessarily say, give me your framework. I just and then usually they'll be like, yeah, I'm here. I'm just getting my framework together. I'm gonna show, so it'll kind of be like that, where it's like, let me just check in. I don't want to miss anybody. And then usually that ends up working. But I will say the biggest thing, and I try to highlight that as much as possible at the end of a call, or even like on the Facebook recap, is that Every single person that presents a framework or even so they have a question always leaves with something better than they came in, whether that's a mindset shift, whether that's feeling supported with confidence, whether that was the actual framework being done. Like I had one person who was so nervous to do a framework and she had like a whole slideshow. Jade is probably, I don't know if she remembers.
Love it.
There was like a whole thing and she had like an acronym, not that you need acronyms, I know people like the acronyms, but like she had everything. It was like, I was like, oh my goodness. I thought she was just verbally tell me. And I said, you can put it in the chat, we'll read it. I'll share my screen. I think she said she was nervous and she wanted to share her screen instead. And I thought that was interesting, but she shared it and it was like, and I was like, I got no feedback to give you. Like, it's
girl, this is good.
Other than that, it's great. You know, I can give you some extra thing just to know about it, but I wouldn't even say change anything. So, but you know, that's what she needed. So I think once people get past that hump, kind of like when we're in school, then it's like they get the confidence and get better. It's just and I think getting one or two people in front of the class, so to speak, to do it kind of helps with other people. So it's something I try to remind them, like, okay, you know, you'll feel better once you do it. Just got to kind of get through it, and usually it works.
Right.
So,
and I'll just add one last thing, because I know a lot of our community members, like Mental Health Awareness Month is here technically when this is going out, and this is the one time a year outside of October and then specialty months, like if people work with moms or postpartum, things like that, or like even domestic violence. Like there's certain things that go on in a year where I say this is your time to shine. Even if it's free, you go out there, you pitch yourself and you speak, you do a training, you do a workshop, even if it's just to reroute people back to your practice. You don't have to desire to be like a Les Brown or Eric Thomas or anything like that. But again, I'm going to encourage therapists to practice doing things that they would be doing in their business behind closed doors anyway with clients, in, for us at least, intimate communities where you can get feedback in a very, I'm not going to say comfortable, because not everybody's comfortable with getting feedback, but it's not someone talking at you. It's not a professor grading you. We just want you to be great, and we want to see you win. And as you had mentioned, the people who speak up, because we see this with the abundance reports, is the people who we see reporting their numbers are the same people that we see they catch their own wins in the next report. And to me, it's not a coincidence that when we were even doing the live streams, I don't know if you remember last year, we did like 4 months of it. We were doing the newsletters, the therapists who win, and people, you know, at some point we start noticing we were getting the same people. That's why we stopped. We were like, the same people go like be announced. But I'm sure some people are like, well, why are these people continuously being announced? Because those are the only people who we know their names associated with their work. And if you don't, we always say this, we've been saying this a lot this year. If you don't want to track your progress, let us track your progress. All we ask is that you fill out the simple form, and the form just isn't for us. It's also for you, because you'll notice, like, I worked too much and I didn't have to this month. This was crazy. Or I should have taken on 2 more clients because I want to be off during June. You know, and so I'm just asking therapists to, out of everything me and Melissa said, like, show up for the next version of yourself. Make decisions for who you're becoming, not who you were in college. You're no longer in college. You either pre-license or you're licensed, especially in our community. That's just the 2 you in. But you decided to be an entrepreneur. Yeah. So, you know, we speak for a living. If you don't want to speak, I don't know what to do.
I'm with you.
Right. So where can people find you if they want to learn more about what you do, the retreats and all? Like, where's the best platforms?
Yes, thank you so much. So my best platform I would say is Instagram. I'm mostly active on there. Instagram, my website, of course. I'm also, I should have added this. So I'm also the president of the Central Florida Association of Family Therapy. I'm like, by the way. So I'm on their website too. So if you are a marriage and family therapist, even if you're not in Florida, I guess, because our calls are also virtual. We do monthly CE events with that group, and everything is system focused. So if you're a couples therapist, family therapist, just someone who wants to learn more about systems, it's a great organization to connect to. So if you want to learn more about that organization I'm a president of, you can reach out to me on my Instagram page or my website, and I'll connect you to them just to keep it kind of short there. I will be promoting more retreats and stuff as well on my Instagram too. So I would say that's probably the best way to kind of keep up to date information. And my website has like all my standalone just kind of information there too.
Okay, so we'll make sure to link up all your information. So in closing, I love to ask this question. If you could speak to the very first year Melissa decided to go into entrepreneurship, what is 1 or 2 tips or words of encouragement that you would send or share with that version of Melissa?
I would say you don't have to read everything that you see on Google and YouTube, or watch everything on Google and YouTube, and that there is help out there.
Nice.
Like real help out there. And no, I'm not saying in a funny way. I'm saying like it could be overwhelming, I think, when you kind of go into it. And if you're, because I think there's two sides of people, right? Either one that wants to read and watch everything and try to figure out, or you see it's too much and you just stop before you even start. And so I think knowing that there's things in the middle where you can go and get support is so helpful. And so just remembering that you don't have to like know every little nook and cranny by yourself. It's going to take time. There is help out there that can help you with it, and that you can do it. Like you can do it. You just have to do it in a way that's at your pace and not look at everybody else's pace and make that your own. So I would say it's probably the biggest few things I would tell myself then. And I feel like I eventually got to those points along the way, but it'll be good reminders, you know, for starting off for sure. That's what
and that's one of the things I love about this question is because there's somebody who's listening or watching who is actually at that stage of either beginning of entrepreneurship or a phase in their private practice where they want to elevate, and they may be able to desire things like on their vision board, but no one knows how it's going to turn out. You know, we can manifest it, but we don't know. We're not living in it. And so it's always good to see like walking, living testimonials of just a diversified group of therapists who are all doing phenomenal things and doing different things. And again, just continuously for, continuously for our team being able to show a high level of appreciation, especially for you and our other support coach, because you all are there for them to meet above and beyond, which is why we love your presence like in the community, because we see what a difference it makes. And then we see like the comments and stuff in Facebook after they have come to the workshop, where a lot of them say, you know, I'm so glad that I did share. I'm so glad that I went ahead and brought the homework, or I missed bringing the homework last time and I saw somebody else do it. So next time I'm gonna, you know, come as well. And so I definitely appreciate you. Definitely keep killing it in the community. Like you're doing a great job. We'll link up all of her information, everybody, in the show notes. But until the next podcast episode, make sure that you subscribe to this channel. Go connect with her on Instagram, send her a DM and tell her what was your biggest takeaway as well over on IG and in the bottom in the comment section. And we will talk to y'all, or I'll talk to y'all on the next podcast episode. Have a great day. Bye.